A long time ago, in a small town, there lived an old toy maker named Gepetto. He sold wooden toys that he made to get by. The only thing the old toy maker regretted in his life was not having a child. One day, when he was walking in the woods, he found just the right log for his new toy.
Just the log I was looking for. I will make a beautiful puppet with it.
Gepetto took the log on his back and carried it to his workshop. He put the log on his table and started to carve. But suddenly something unexpected happened and he heard a voice coming from the log. Ah! Gepetto was stunned at first, but then thought that he was mistaken. Gepetto kept on carving, but then he heard the same voice again. Ah!
I must be getting really old. I am hearing voices.
Gepetto kept on working. First the head of the puppet came out. Then finally his arms and legs followed. Gepetto finally finished the puppet, sat him on a chair, and started to tidy up. At that moment, he heard another voice. Hello! Gepetto looked around stunned, but he could not see anybody else than the wooden puppet. So he kept on with his work. After a short while, the puppet jumped down from the chair and started dancing in the room. Seeing this, Gepetto really struggled not to faint.
Oh my God! This puppet is alive!
Of course it wasn't a real kid, but it sure laughed, talked, and played like one. Gepetto held the puppet in his arms.
From now on, your name shall be Pinocchio, my child.
Gepetto and Pinocchio started to have happy times together. It was time for Pinocchio to go to school. But Gepetto did not have the money to buy Pinocchio his school stationery. Therefore, he sold his coat and gave the money to Pinocchio. Pinocchio took the money and got on his way to school with joy. Watching all the shops, people and the marketplaces on the way, suddenly he saw a commotion ahead. To find out what was going on, he went amongst the crowd. Because he was so short, he barely walked past everyone to get to the front. What he saw was a big, colourful tent. It was a circus tent. The clown in front of the tent was calling out customers. Pinocchio was curious to see what was inside, but the clown stopped him from entering.
You can't go inside unless you pay.
Pinocchio thought for a while and remembered the money Gepetto gave him for school.
I have money.
He took the money out of his pocket and gave it to the clown. Inside the tent was extreme fun. He saw puppets playing on the stage in the middle of the tent.
Hey, they're also made out of wood.
Jumping on the stage, Pinocchio started to dance amongst the puppets. But the spectators of the show were angry with him.
Get off the stage!
The owner of the circus above the stage, holding the strings of the puppets, got very happy to see a live puppet.
A puppet without strings would make me a lot of money. Ha 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 ha!
He thought. And as soon as the show was over, he caught Pinocchio and put him in a cage. Pinocchio was very upset that he did not listen to Gepetto and went directly to school, so he started to cry. Seeing how regretful Pinocchio was, a fairy appeared right next to him. "You should have done what your father told you to do, but I see that you are aware of your mistake now. That is why I will save you, but don't you ever do the same mistake again." Pinocchio was very happy. He wiped his tears away.
But I have no money. How am I going to go to school now?
The fairy cast a spell and money appeared in Pinocchio's hand. "Do not waste this money. Go straight to school." The fairy took Pinocchio out of the circus. Singing with joy, Pinocchio was on his way to school once again.
La 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 la.
Seeing Pinocchio joyfully singing, the shifty fox and his friends, the cat, cut Pinocchio's way. And they made a plan to take away Pinocchio's money.
Where are you going so joyfully anyway?
I'm going to buy some stationery and go to school.
This money won't be enough for stationery. If you do as we say, you'll have much more money.
What do you want me to do?
You'll give us that money and we'll plant it in the magic field. And you too can have a money tree. You can go and pick the money up whenever you need.
The naive Pinocchio believed everything Fox had said and gave away his money. Taking away the money, the fox and the cat quickly got away. Being left alone, the fairy appeared next to Pinocchio again. "Why aren't you still at school? Did you get the stationery with the money I gave you?" Actually, the fairy knew that he gave his money to the fox. She warned Pinocchio. "Don't you lie to me, or I will punish you." Pinocchio did not listen to the fairy and lied anyway.
I bought the stationery but left them at school."
As soon as Pinocchio finished his sentence, his nose started to grow. "Are you telling the truth?" As he told more lies, Pinocchio's nose kept on growing and growing. At the end, he couldn't even move his head.
But how? What is going on?
Finally, he realized his mistake and told the fairy all about what had happened. Seeing that Pinocchio had taken the right path, the fairy brought his nose back to normal. "I am forgiving you because you told the truth." With another spell, she gave back the money the fox had taken. And she once more warned him not to waste any more of his money. Holding the money in his hand, singing along, Pinocchio started to walk again. But this time round, he was facing another type of danger. The circus owner that had captured him was standing right there before his eyes. Because he had gotten away, the circus owner was very cross with Pinocchio. He wanted to punish him. He caught Pinocchio and threw him in the sea. When Pinocchio fell over into the sea, he did not sink. He stayed afloat on the water because he was made of wood. Pinocchio really liked this feeling and started to swim by moving his arms and legs. And it all happened while he was swimming to the shore.
Hey, what's going on? Where am I?
Pinocchio suddenly found himself in a dark place. He looked around but could not see a way out. Actually, Pinocchio was swallowed by a giant fish, and now he was sitting right in the middle of his stomach. Meanwhile, Gepetto was worried about Pinocchio, and he went out to search for him.
Pinocchio! Pinocchio!
Finally, he had reached the shore where Pinocchio was thrown in the sea. He asked the fishermen whether they had seen his son or not. One of the fishermen remembered the boy Gepetto was asking for, and he told him that he fell down in the sea. Gepetto asked the fisherman for help. Knowing how good a person Gepetto was, the fisherman could not refuse to help. And so he gave him a small boat to save Pinocchio. Gepetto jumped on the boat and sailed to the sea. After a while, suddenly a big storm had begun. The small boat could not handle the big waves anymore and collapsed. And Gepetto found himself in the middle of the sea. Gepetto was old and also did not know how to swim, so he started to sink deep into the water. Right at that moment, the giant fish which had swallowed Pinocchio also swallowed Gepetto. Gepetto slid down the fish's throat straight into his stomach, and he heard the crying voice of a child. He, of course, recognized this voice right away.
Pinocchio, my son, I finally found you. I was so worried.
Hearing his father's voice, Pinocchio hugged Gepetto in tears.
I'm so sorry I didn't listen to you, Daddy. Forgive me. I will always do what you say.
Seeing that this time Pinocchio was really sorry, the fairy decided to rescue them. She took Gepetto and Pinocchio out of the fish's belly and flew them onto the shore. Pinocchio became a very clever boy after that day and always listened to his father. Went to school every day, and after school he ran home to help his father in his workshop. The fairy saw what a nice boy Pinocchio became and decided to give him a prize. One night, when Pinocchio was sleeping, she came next to his bed and cast a spell on him. In the morning, Pinocchio woke up to get ready for school, as always. Just as he was getting out of bed, he realized that something was different. First, he looked at his hands, and then to his body. He was shocked. He was not made of wood anymore. He was a normal boy, right in the flesh. He jumped with joy from his bed and ran next to his father.
Daddy! Daddy! Look at me!
Seeing Pinocchio as a real boy made Gepetto very happy.
Finally, I have a real son.
Father and son, they hugged each other with tears of joy. Pinocchio never lied again, and his nose always stayed where it was. It was New Year's Eve, and it was snowing. Stahlbaum family's home was decorated beautifully with colourful, shimmery ornaments and a big Christmas tree with its flashing lights. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Clara, the youngest girl in the family, went to the door and opened it with joy. With his arms full of presents, in came Uncle Drosselmeyer. When Clara saw her favourite uncle with all these presents, she was very excited. Clara had no patience whatsoever to wait until midnight. She wanted to have her present that moment. Uncle Drosselmeyer could not let Clara down, and so he gave her present. Very excited, Clara opened her present. This was the most interesting present she ever had got. Her uncle's present was a funny-faced nutcracker with a red nose and a thin moustache. Clara never had a toy like this before. She really loved this toy nutcracker. She started playing with it, and she even danced. Clara's naughty brother Fritz, on the other hand, did not like his present, and so he threw it away. He liked Clara's nutcracker more, so he tried to take it from her.
I want this!
No, Fritz, this is mine! At last, he managed to take the Nutcracker from Clara's hand and went upstairs. Hey, Fritz! Hurry up and give my toy back! You go and play with your own toy!
I never liked that mouse. This should be mine.
Fritz, please don't! Give back my Nutcracker!
Here you are.
And what does Clara see as she approaches to get the Nutcracker? The arm of the toy was broken right there on the ground. Clara got very upset and began to cry.
Don't worry, Clara. I'll fix that for you.
It was past midnight, the New Year celebrations were over, and just like all the other kids, Clara was tired, and so she lied down. But she couldn't stop thinking about her Nutcracker toy. I hope Uncle was able to fix the Nutcracker. With all the overwhelming curiosity, Clara jumped out of bed. And with one hope, she entered the living room, and there it was, the Nutcracker in one piece sitting under the Christmas tree. Clara was so happy, she hugged the Nutcracker, and in peace she fell asleep. Not long after, in her sleep, Clara heard some funny noises. And slowly, as she opened her eyes, she thought she was dreaming, and she drifted off again. Not knowing at that very moment she had started her journey to Neverland. The noises began once again, as if it were the mice making all that noise. Clara opened her eyes once again. The furniture in the house seemed to be much bigger now. The Christmas tree where she was sleeping turned into a gigantic tree. Clara was wide awake now, and right at that moment, she noticed that in fact nothing was actually growing, but instead she was shrinking. And just then she noticed the Mouse King and his army were heading her way. She was very scared and wanted to run away, but the giant mice managed to stop her. They began to surround her and slowly started to close in towards her. At that point, the Nutcracker had also come alive.
Why are you standing there, Clara? We can climb up that tree and get away.
Clara and the Nutcracker managed to climb the tree and from there jumped up to the upper floor. Where are we going to run away to?
This is your home. You must know somewhere where the mice can't find you. I'm going to call for help.
As Clara was running, Nutcracker was nowhere to be seen. The mice had scattered all around the house. They were looking for Clara. The Nutcracker had approached a toy store. He saw that there were many tin soldiers sitting in the window. He grabbed a rock and broke the window.
Hey, what are you guys doing just standing there? Run! My friend Clara is in trouble. Mouse King and his army are going to catch her.
All of a sudden, the tin soldiers had all come alive. They all jumped out of the broken window and followed the Nutcracker. Once the Nutcracker arrived back at the house, it looked like a war scene. The mice had turned the place upside down. The Nutcracker and his soldiers pulled out their swords and began to fight Mouse King and his army. Unfortunately, there were more mice than the tin soldiers. Most of the tin soldiers were wounded. The Nutcracker was in bad shape himself. He was wounded in several areas. Clara got out of where she was hiding. She knew she had to do something, but as small as she was, she knew that this was impossible. Mouse King approached the Nutcracker and drew his sword towards his face. With great panic, Clara yelled and threw her shoe at the Mouse King. Ew! There, you dirty mouse! The shoe flew and it hit Mouse King's head. Unconsciously, the Mouse King dropped to the ground. Seeing their king drop to the ground, the mice accepted the fact that they had lost. And so they carried their king out of the living room and left. Clara ran to the Nutcracker. He was unconsciously laying on the floor. Clara kneeled down to the Nutcracker and began to cry.
Nutcracker, wake up!
Suddenly, a fairy appeared behind Clara. With her blue outfit, wings, and her lollipop wand, she was an extremely sweet fairy. The fairy couldn't stand the sight of Clara's tears, and so she used her magic. And right at that moment, the Nutcracker transformed into a handsome prince. With amazement and happiness, Clara found herself looking at the prince. The handsome prince reached out his hands and they began to dance. This was a magical dance. Clara noticed that at that point she began to float in the air. And again, amongst the fairy dust appeared the Candy Fairy. This time round, there were other fairies amongst her. The fairies flew Clara and Prince Nutcracker to Candyland. Trees made out of candy, jelly bean flowers, pink butterflies, golden-coloured toffee apples. It was such an enchanting place. Clara began to tell her story and all that had happened. I know everything that's happened. Don't worry, Clara. You are safe with us. Soon later, a peaceful sound of a flute surrounded the atmosphere. And so fairies and colourful flowers began to dance. Short while later, the Nutcracker and Clara joined the dance. All around you could see dancing colourful trees, lollipops and candy. Clara and the Nutcracker Prince suddenly realised that they were on stage. After the unique sound of the flute had ended, Clara looked around. She was on stage. The audience in front of her was applauding. Clara bowed to the audience. With happiness, she closed her eyes. Clara? Clara! Right at that moment, with the sound of her mother's voice, she opened her eyes. She rubbed her eyes and looked around. Later, noticed the Nutcracker toy was on her lap. With great confusion, her mother was staring at her. Little did she know, Clara was also lost in confusion. Darling, did you sleep here all night? Mother, but everything seems so real. With the happy thought of returning back to her dream, Clara closed her eyes.